Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this class of Christian Worldview. And this is a part of series on understanding Christianity. And this is our 7th class. And we only have just 4 more classes left, and today we'll start with the lesson 3 on the topic of worldview is perceived. In the last classes we've discussed the topic that worldview is puzzled, right? Now worldview is perceived. Basically, what the worldview is, it has to do with your perception. So, the word perceived means you are looking at something and understanding or recognizing or seeing in rather easy word. You're seeing certain things, but the problem is you are not seeing just as exactly as others do. That means everyone sees the same thing, but even though they see the same thing, they perceive, perceive in a very different way. Sometimes really in a different way. Even, in fact, some people see in very opposite way. One sees in this end, at the east, and one sees in the west. So east and west are far from each other. Their perception might be different. Okay, so let's continue with this topic. The worldview is perceived. Okay, the reality. Reality is the topic. I mean, it's a thing, and okay, here's a tree planted in a garden. Maybe in the Garden of Eden. God had planted many different trees. The reality, there are trees, or a tree. And you can either perceive, conceive, then interpret, then implicate, and evaluate. These are the ways that you can. I mean, there are many different ways, though, but still, these are some of the examples on how one can perceive or react to the reality. So perceive means trying to define the perception, or the word perceive. You conceive. Conceive means you take the reality into yourself. So everyone does that. A person with the right mind and with a certain sensitivity, or if you have 5 senses, then you not only perceive and look at the things, see the things, but you take it into yourself. That's conceive. So we say, do you know the word conception? Conception means having a baby. Okay? So just like a mother having a baby in her womb, you can conceive the reality, not only the idea, but reality. You take it into you. So that's conceive. And then what you do is already, as you conceive the reality, the tree. See, let me give you an example of conception, conceive. In English, it's a tree, but in Korean, it's namu. And in Chinese, it's something else, right? So even though it's the same reality, the words in different languages itself, it's different. So English person, an American person will see a tree and say in his or her mind, it says tree. That sound, that consonant and vowel kind of comes together to make a word a tree. So that's their way of conception. That's how they conceive. But a Korean sees a tree and he or she will say namu. It's a totally different world. Even though it's the same reality, the conception is different. As you conceive, you're already doing the interpretation. So in the culture, in English-speaking culture, tree has a certain connotation, and it has certain context that comes with it. So tree in Western culture still is deeply influenced by Christianity. So tree and the fruits, one thing they can associate and interpret is the tree of good and evil, the tree in the garden, the tree which the Adam and Eve took a fruit out of and ate in spite of God's forbidden order not to eat it. So that's how they may interpret, even though they are not thinking about it, and unconsciously you interpret. So the perception, it takes a conception and it takes an interpretation. So you interpret. And the implicate. Implicate means what the reality is going to have a meaning to you. So it becomes meaningful. When something has meaning or meanings, that has an implication to you. Not all the things will have these implications to you, but certain things will have implication for you. So it has a meaning. For many people, the tree is a tree. You pass it by every day. You drive and there are trees on the side of the road, but you do not recognize. But for the people who's working in a city, who is taking care of these trees, that's their job. So for the person who's doing the taking care of scenery and the planting of trees and trimming of it and making sure that the trees are in good condition, for them, a tree is not just a tree. It's their life. It's their salary. It is their job. So in those cases, the tree has much more implication than just regular normal people. So it has meaning. See, that's how we perceive same reality in a very different way. Many example. for many people, money is probably top priority. It's number one priority in their life. So many work hard to earn money because they think money is everything. Money is key to their survival. Some even kill another person, actually kill another person for the money. So for them, the meaning of money is critical. It's key importance. It has much heavier implication to them. But on the other hand, some people don't care much about money or health. So they just want to live in the street, not worrying about paying taxes or the salaries and worrying about how to educate their children or feed today's meal, what to put on the table. Those are the secondary. So the money is just not that important. It doesn't have that much meaning. So same people, we live in the same context, same street, but some people care a lot about the money while the others don't care much about the money. So the implication, the meaning is different on the same reality. So the reality is there, but we cannot say in an objective manner about the tree because everyone sees differently. Now, the last thing here. When you perception takes evaluation. So you evaluate. Evaluate means not only the meaning, you rate. It's similar. It is closely related to the meaning. When something has an implication, it doesn't mean always positive. It could be positive or negative. So first evaluation that you do is whether it's plus or minus. Is it going to help me, my family, my community, or is it harmful for myself, my family, or my community? So either it's going to be positive or negative. And the ways that we evaluate the things, if we simplify, there is easy scale of this evaluation. So people unconsciously think, okay, this is best. So easy 6 scale evaluation. So when you see the reality, when you face the reality, whether it's new or it's something that continues every day, you're going to evaluate this reality. Is this tree? If you're looking for a log, I mean something put on your fire, a dead tree, which is dried to its bone. that will be the best. If you're looking for the food, a tree that bearing a good fruit, an apple tree will be best. So it depends on if you're looking for a wood for your furnace, your fireplace, then this lively tree with the good ripe apples on it is not good. It's probably the worst. So the same reality, different implication and different evaluation. So we talked about tree, but what if it's a person? So probably the most important and most frequent reality a person face every day in this society of today would be a person or people. So you have to conceive a person. You have to interpret a person. You have to find the implication of that person in your life. And you also continually evaluating that person through the conversation, by looking at the actions and the words they are saying, and all these things, their gestures, these things are important. So you're sensitive. And so worldview has to do with your daily life, especially with those people around you. So probably the key reality a person has to perceive, and your worldview, it has to do with the person the most, and that's the example and the definition and the conception of word perceive. Okay, when you perceive something, here are the 6 senses. This is easy. You see, you hear, you touch, and you smell, and you taste, and then you sense. And this sense is not those 5, and we call that the sixth sense, sense number 6. That is something that it is difficult to define, because you cannot prove it in scientific way. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, these things you can measure, you can quantify, and you can identify. These are our common perceptions. So 5 senses of perceptions are more. You can make it more objective way compared to the subjective. Objective means many people kind of agree onto it, and it kind of, you can make an agreement on. That's objective. Subjective means it's personal and individual, and it can be different. So science tries to focus on the objectivity of data and the facts and the logics. These are the dealing of science. But the sense number 6. This has to do with unseen, unknown. It's more of feelings, more of your spiritual area. It's more of those that cannot be quantified. So it has to do with your experience, your spirituality, your mental, and your thoughts and ideas, and these are things that are included in that sense number 6. So again, we use these 5 things that are given to you to test and examine the physical world, and then you have sense number 6. This usually, this 6th sense has to do with more of people. You can see a person, how tall, how heavy they are, and how old they are, whether male or female. These things you can detect or perceive with these 5 different senses. But those doesn't tell them much, actually. And you have to take your sense number 6 to understand and to perceive and to examine, to evaluate, to interpret a person. So it takes a lot of sense number 6 to understand a person. But you can be handicapped or challenged or limited by having one of those 5 senses. Not having one of those 5 senses. You can be blinded, you can be your smell may be gone, your taste are not that good, so it can be limited. And most limited sense out of these 6 is number 6. People have very different degree of number 6 sense. Okay, when you perceive or conceive, the perception has these 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions. So whether it's your visual or it's number 6 sense, you come up with these areas of perception. So 3 dimensions of perception are: number 1, cognitive; number 2, affective; number 3, affirmative. And this is a basic paradigm and framework of understanding a person. Any psychologist today, modern psychologist or philosopher or religious person, leader, will say these are 3 dimensions of human understanding or human perception or human conception. Cognitive, it means your knowledge. Mainly it has to do with your brain function, your thoughts. So it's more of intellectual thing. So cognitive, if you're more learned, more educated, your cognitive capacity or ability will increase by education. But that doesn't necessarily means that you have to have a high degree or PhD to have a better cognitive than others. Because It's not only the knowledge, it has to do with all the experiences you may have. So cognitive covers more than your classroom education. But anyway, the cognitive area of perception is how you see the reality, and then they take that reality and analyze it and study it and put into your brain, your thoughts, in a very systematic way. So good cognitive perception says there are certain rooms in your brain or in your mind, in your thoughts, and you have a certain way of arranging these informations, knowledge, into certain rooms. So later on you can take it out in a very systematic way to utilize them. So that's basically what the education is about, right? Not only you just remembering certain thing or knowledge is just one part of it. And the way I was educated and trained in Korea in my days, you're trained to remember things, but in Western world, the cognitive usually it has to do with the understanding of the logics, understanding of the principles. So it focuses more of understanding than memorizing it. So that's kind of different approach even within the cognitive area of perception. The next one, the affective, it's more of your emotion and your feelings. It's more of your right brain, while the cognitive is more of your left brain, people say. Anyway, so affective means how you perceive these emotions and feelings and those unseen. It's something that cannot be quantified, but it is something that you can qualify. So affective is a love, fear, and there's suffering, and then sadness. These are the area of affective. Some people are perceive more of affection than the other. Some people are less of emotional. Some people are less in understanding the feelings. So not every person have a full capacity of affective perception. Just like the cognitive perception or IQ is different from one person to the other. The EQ, so-called emotional quantity might be different from one to the other. So affective area, it's different. The people perceive in a very different ways. Now, the affirmative, it has to do with your will and your strength of desire and your decision making. So that's some other area. While the cognitive and affective, it is more of conception. The affirmative area is how you evaluate, interpret, and then put that into an action. Or you decide the course of your response, your life. So some people have a stronger will or a stronger desire, and that they have strength of having the perseverance meaning continuing to be patient, so they can sustain, they can overcome these sufferings and difficulties better than others. So some people have a stronger affirmative area than the other. So I mean, this is like a so you can evaluate a person that you know and say this person is very strong and cognitive, but weak and affective, and weak and affirmative. And this person is very strong and effective and affirmative, but weak in cognitive. So it depends on a person, but you have a certain paradigm or platform to evaluate a person. And to be a leader, as we talked about in a different class, and a person with a leadership doesn't always have to have all these three areas and strong. You know, it's not that easy to find someone with all strength in all these three areas. Leaders usually have strength in certain area, outstanding strength in either cognitive or affective or affirmative. And in ancient days, many leaders have a strength in affirmative areas. But today's leaders, they require more of affective. People used to say this affective thing is more feminine than the male thing, but it's different paradigm now. So today's culture demands more of affective perception than other two, maybe. So as the age changes, the era changes, the leadership model also changes. So this is very important to remember and utilize as you try to evaluate other people. Now, true reality versus perceived reality. I've been talking about the fact that people does not perceive the reality as it is. I mean, you cannot. So the true reality, a tree there, and the way Adam and Eve perceived that tree is quite different. So there's no objective way of perceiving the reality. It's not possible. Whether it's a tree or something bigger, it's still the same. Okay, the reasons for us having this difference in the true reality and perceived reality is because of some of these factors, the reasons. Okay, so we'll go over each of them and try to understand why the people perceive the reality in their own ways, and why there's a difference between the perceived reality and true reality. Okay? First thing is the human limitations. Us human are not all-knowing, just like God, our God is. We don't have all the knowledge, and we are not even, close to perfection. We are not perfect, and our eyes, those with the good eyes, maybe, and they have a 6.0 sight, while most of us are somewhere around 1 point something, right? So eyesight, it varies, it's limited. You cannot see the far objects, so it takes a telescope to see beyond the universe, and it takes a microscope to see the small tiny object. This coronavirus 19 that we are fighting against, that's a really tiny object. You can only see that with the electronic microscope. So that's how we are limited. Just eyesight alone, we have much limitation. So the reality, there are viruses flying around and contaminating, and we cannot see those viruses with our own bare eyes. If we could, we don't need to worry about this pandemic. You see it, you avoid it, you wipe it out, or you kill those viruses if you can see them. But the problem is our limitation. Even though the reality says there are viruses, many of them who can hurt you and who can make you sick and who can even kill you, but you cannot see the reality, the virus. So that's true. True reality says there are a whole bunch of viruses, but since you cannot see them, you go touch it and you take it into your body. So that's our limitation that limits our perception. And people say they know everything. Actually, we don't. And some people say there's no God, because you cannot touch God, you cannot see them. They say prove me that there is God. And you cannot even see the virus, and how can you see that mighty God? That's the logic. Okay, the second factor that limits our perception of reality is prejudice and presumptions and discrimination. All these things, you are influenced, you are programmed, you are taught not to see the things in a certain way. Some have that twisted mind. Some have much negative attitude toward the life. When your life attitude is negative, then the reality that you see is going to be negative. So that's prejudice. Some people think and even believe white people are better than the black people. They were educated in that way and brainwashed somehow. The culture says that, they say that, and all the friends say that, and when that happens, the prejudice goes up. The reality is, whether you're white, black, or brown, yellow, it doesn't matter. People are people. They have values. Whether they are old, whether they are young, whether they are woman, whether they are man, that doesn't make any difference in their value. That's how the Bible teaches. But some people even take certain verses from Bible and try to prove their prejudice. It did happen in Europe. It did happen in America. And they said it's okay to have black slaves because they were cursed by God, and that's why their skin became black. I mean, no, they take out some verses from the Bible and justify their prejudice. So the worldview can be twisted. It can be, narrowed. It can be cut, edited. When that happens, it becomes discrimination, and it becomes a prejudice. So this is something that we are trying to avoid. And how do we do that? By finding the truth. The truth is the only way to see the reality as it is. So truth again matters. Truth matters, and we've discussed this in previous lessons, and we talked about it. And the worldview, you want to see the reality as it is, in a very objective way, without prejudice, without presumptions, or having discrimination. So that's the second factor. Number 3, that's something of, while the prejudice and discrimination have very negative connotation, this favor and orientation or preference, I don't have that in there, preference. Please look up this word in your dictionary. And the preference, favor, or orientation, certain orientation, as what you are having very positive attitude on a certain things. So because of your favorism, your orientation, or your preference, you don't have you're not perceiving the reality as it is, but you're perceiving reality in a different way. So if you have a certain political agenda or political preference, then you will see the same event, same incident in a very different way. You can be a conservative, or you can be a radical in understanding the issues. You can be a pro-choice, or you can be pro-life. So these are some of your inclination or preference or orientation. So the word orientation, these days you may use it to designate a certain way of doing, liking people. So we say sexual orientation. It means, actually it means a man liking woman or a woman liking a man. That's the usual way. But when man likes a man and a girl likes a girl, that's a different kind of sexual orientation. So that's the word orientation is used, for example. So again, people have certain preference, favor, or orientation, something that they like better than the other. Because of that tendency, because of that inclination, you may not perceive the reality as it is. You can take that reality out of context and you can interpret, you can conceive it to your favor, to your orientation, to your like. Okay? Now, next factor, misleading or malinformed. Because of our human limitation that on the top of the list, our learning is also limited. You cannot learn everything. You cannot have all the information. And not only your information is limited, you learn wrong information. You get the wrong information and you believe it to be good or it to be right. When that happens, you are misled and you are malinformed. Malinformed meaning you are not informed properly. You are not informed in a good manner. So when that happens, this misinformation and the wrong information and misled instructions, these things affect your decisions, your perceptions, your interpretations, and then you are going to perceive the reality. Tree is no longer a tree, and when you are more informed, the apple is not something that you can eat, and it's harmful to you when you are misinformed or misled. A tree can be something that hinders your development. So what you do, you're gonna cut the trees and build a building or something else and make it a city. So that's kind of, when you're misinformed, it can lead to worse or even worse consequences. Not only you are perceiving the reality in a limited, in a crooked, twisted way, but when you're more informed, it can cause destruction. It can cause harm to others. So being misled and more informed is very critical to your worldview. So, for example, you grew up in a country where the Muslim or the Muslim is a dominant religion or is a state religion. There's no way that you are going to be informed about some other religions or some other possibilities. That's the same for the other way around. If you were born into a Christian home, very strict Christian home, fundamental Christian home, and raised in that manner, you have no chance to be informed about some other religions, some other choices. So that's also you can be misinformed, because when you do not have freedom to respond or make that your own intellectual, effective and affirmative cognitive decision of your own, then you're still misled and you're still malinformed. So it doesn't matter whether you're born into a Christian home or a Muslim state, it's the same situation. You still have to make your own perception of reality, whether it's true or not. So being a true Christian does not mean that you're born into a Christian home and raised in a church. That doesn't mean anything, actually. You have to be born again. You have to be spiritually a living Christian. So true Christian is one who has that power of the Holy Spirit and have that personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Without that, the Christianity is just a religion. It's another laws and sets of rules and do's and don'ts. So if you're listening to this class, and if you're say a Christian, then you have to examine yourself and ask yourself, am I a true Christian? Because the reality presented by many churches today are not really true gospel, but it is something else. Because of that, many Christians, so-called Christians, believe that they are Christian, but actually they are not. So that's sad, but that's what the reality is. Okay. Next, the screen and select. People, they have ways to screen out the information or perception. So the good example is eyewitnesses. And even though there are several eyewitnesses who has seen a murder, they have different perception of the person who committed, suspect. Some only saw a hat, and even though they saw the hat, some say it's gray, some say it's black, some say it's brown. I mean, they've seen the same crime scene and the same suspect, but they have very different perceptions. So this is actually true in the criminal science. So we know that people does not see exactly the same thing. So why does that happen? Because people screen out and they do make choices when they perceive the reality. And that choices are affected by all these factors. It could be their limitation, their prejudice, or their orientation, or their misinformation. These things affect their decision of perception. Even though you're seeing the certain few seconds of a certain scene, you are not seeing everything. That's technically and scientifically and humanly impossible. So people make choices. and they see what they want to see. See, because of that, even the eyewitnesses, no, it's that there's no 100% true eyewitness. So this tells a lot about your worldview. So the worldview that we are talking about is, the worldview is different from one person to the other. So no one shares exactly the same worldview. That cannot happen. But what we are trying to do is try to reach a common agreement and understanding, and kind of consensus about the truth. And is a truth being made, or is a truth given by someone who is beyond our perception and our power? That's the question. So Christian worldview says truth cannot be made by people kind of coming together and gathering and discussing which is the true and which is not. That's not going to solve the issue of finding the truth. The Christianity, the Bible says the truth is beyond our limitation. It's beyond our ability. It's beyond and above us. Thus, the truth has to be given by God. And again, the true reality is given by God, and only God defines the reality. That's the concept of creation, because God has created the world and the reality. He's the one who already defined that the reality, because He's the one who made it. And the way He explains, way He presents, way He helps us to see, that's the truth. That's the reality. So objectivity is given by the authority of God, not by our intelligence or our affection or our affirmation. So our decision cannot reach the truth because it's way beyond us. Why? Because we have sinned. Because of our sin, we are not able to see the reality as it is. Because sin has corrupted our perception. Sin has corrupted our desire. Sin has corrupted our motivation. Because of these things, we are not able to reach the truth. And we will never see the reality as it is. We will never be able to perceive the reality as it is because of our own corruption. So, out of all these, the major cause of us not being able to see the reality as reality is our own corruption, our own sin, our own fault. That's how the Bible presents. Okay, there are some other factors, or some other ways of explaining the reason why us people do not see the true reality, rather see or perceive reality in their own ways. Interpretation again. I've explained that already, and the people do interpret. Interpretation is a process. In interpretation, we take all these factors that we discussed just before. So these factors come into the interpretation, and because of those factors, the process of interpretation takes longer. Even though it may sound like a second as you interpret someone else's language or statement, someone tells you something, someone says something to you as you have a conversation, you keep interpreting their words, their statement, and their expressions, and then you see the movement of their eyes, their facial expressions, their hand motions, and their poise and their manners, and you constantly look at these, and what you do, you're interpreting and saying, okay, he or she is saying the truth, okay, he or she is making judgment on me, or they are being truthful, they are lying. Those responses inside you, those are interpretations. And so this interpretation happens as you live your daily life. So the reality, again, has much to do with this person and people. Blind spots. When you drive a car, you have basically 3 mirrors. One on the top of the ceiling, and one on the right, and a left one on the right. Okay. So what those back mirrors do, you try to see the blind spots, because you cannot turn your head back and take a look at the backside of your car always. So those mirrors are there, but still you have spots that you cannot see, because those mirrors does not cover every area. So those are called blind spots. Same thing with your perception. When we see the things and the people, we do have blind spots. We cannot see everything. We cannot perceive 100% of everything that's going on. So those blind spots exist. It does exist. And some have a bigger blind spots, or some people have a smaller blind spot. It's better to have a smaller blind spot, but most of us cannot but have a big blind spots, because we are limited. We cannot see everything that we want to see. Even though they do not hide, we do we do have these blind spots. But when people try to hide their intentions or their real self, then you have a bigger blind spot, because they are trying to hide themselves from you. So in many cases, I cannot say, probably more than 90% of our daily contact with other people they are not 100% honest. They do not want to show themselves clearly and transparent. See, so we have big blind spot when we are dealing with reality. And where even if you try to look more of real world, you want to perceive everything. The truth of matter is you cannot. Okay? And another thing is so-called tunnel vision. This has to do with the prejudice that we talked about. Once you have a prejudice, then you're going to have a narrow tunnel vision. If you've seen a horse that pulls a chariot, fulfilled chariot, they have something on their eyes. It tries to blind the sideways because you don't want the distractions, and you don't want these horses to be distracted. And it creates a tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is the word. When you go into a tunnel, everything is black, and then only there's a limited light on at the exit of that tunnel. So that's called tunnel vision. Very narrow, small spot. And everything else is black. So that's tunnel vision. And it's like having a window in your house. I mean, if you're outside, you can just turn around 360 degrees and you can see everything around you. But you're in a house and you can only see outside through the windows. And if you have a curtain over those windows, that window is also, again, limited. Same thing with your perception. We have that tunnel vision. We do not have wide angle 630 degree panorama view. That's not how we see the reality. We see the reality with the tunnel vision, and we see the reality with certain windows. And these windows and the tunnel vision is created by your culture, your parents, your education, so limited perception of your ancestors or your colleagues or your friends that also cause you to have that tunnel vision. So what do? We try to overcome. How do we do that? Christianity says, the Bible says, only that happens when you see the things through the eye of God, through as God sees them, the so-called divine vision. So divine vision is unlimited. Divine vision, you can see the things as God sees the things. How does God see the people? He has mercy on people. He has grace on people. So how do we see the people? We should see them with the mercy and grace. Okay? So that's how Bible teaches us to overcome a tunnel vision. Tunnel vision says only white people are the friends of white people, and other races are enemies. Not today, but it used to be the way the white people see the other races. But still, some white supremacists, they still say white people are the only worthy people who can rule over the world. They are the best of all the races. And these things racism and nationalism and religious prejudice, including some Christians. They created their own tunnel vision, and God says, get out of it. Just throw that tunnel vision, that windows, and go outside and look with a wide angle, the panorama view. Sunglassing. Sunglass may not limit your vision. It does not tunnel your vision, but it can color your vision. So sunglassing is coloring of coloring of your perception. So it does not narrow down it may not narrow down your vision. The sunglassing colors. So you see the reality in a different color than as it is. So when you put on the sunglasses, it it adds a color to the reality. So that's sunglassing. And distortion is crooking, twisting of the vision. And when you distort certain things, you don't see those things as it is. And distortion is seeing the reality in crooked way. Your discrimination also, and you cut off certain things from your vision. Okay? All right. Thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next week, and we'll continue with our lesson number 8. So thank you and bye.